Hello, welcome to CGTN. This is our special coverage of China's annual political season. Live from Beijing, I'm Pan Deng.
And I'm Li Dongning.
Political advisors are wrapping up their annual session at Great Hall of the People in Beijing today. Members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or the CPPCC, are expected to deliberate and pass several important documents.
Right, and Pan Deng, these include some political resolutions from the second session of the 13th CPPCC National Committee, and the committee's chairman Wang Yang will be delivering a speech very soon. So we'll bring you live coverage of that event. And also CGTV has a very strong team of reporters on the scene to give you a full-scale report of the gathering. So stay with us for all that. First of all, let's cross over to my colleagues Tian Wei and Mike Water just outside of the Great Hall of People. Hello guys, good morning indeed. The closing session will kick off very soon, and I understand you have been talking to CPPCC members about their political advisory work. So what are some of the proposals or issues that have caught your attention?
Good morning to you and Pan Deng. Of course, there are a lot of issues for this year's CPPCC. One of the things is China's economy is facing challenges, but there are many opportunities as well. And also there are international relations issues that China needs to deal with well. For example, that with the United States.
Yes.
Meanwhile, China brought out its own issue of Belt and Road Initiative with a mechanism for all partners around the world. So all of these issues are being discussed by the CPPCC members who are now right now in the Great Hall of People waiting for the closing ceremony, Mike.
Yeah, even the work report from Premier Li Keqiang, he talked about risks and turning those risks into opportunities. And you're hearing a lot of that during these two sessions. But one of the things that struck me, I was in the members' corridor earlier in between our live shots, a lot of the questions aren't about the two sessions. They're not even about the present. They're about the future, about 5G, about AI, about the shift here in China from a basically from a consumer-driven to producer-driven economy, this digital economy. In fact, they even had someone from one of the universities in there, and they were asking them, how do you train the next generation for this kind of shift? And even that, the focus in education in universities, how do you change this? Because you've got all these people who are going to be in the digital front lines. How do you train them for the future?
Technological transformation is bringing us a lot of challenges and opportunities about employment, about the future shape of the economy, and about interaction China is having with the rest of the world. Having said that, though, this is a very important session we are having this year because it celebrates 70th anniversary of the CPPCC, this advisory body to the Chinese government. Meanwhile, this year is also 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. Last year we just celebrated 40 years anniversary of reform, as you may know.
Absolutely.
In China, a lot of anniversaries, but these anniversaries are important because we really need to reflect upon the experiences and lessons and really learn and therefore bring all of China on the same line and toward the future. That is the function of this year's session as they were before. But one of the things that we are talking about now, Mike, as you beautifully illustrated, is that China is not looking at itself in the political season. China is looking at itself together with the rest of the world. How can we make it better?
Absolutely. And one of the things that you hear from the members is just how earnest they are. So many of them coming armed with proposals. We were just talking to one of the members just about a half hour ago, saying the whole delegation, everybody's coming in, they're all excited, they're working together. And this advisory committee basically offering up all of these suggestions for the government. The MPC also very, very much at work listening to a lot of the delegations here from the deputies. They also have their own issues in each particular region of the country, but all of them talking about the move forward.
A lot of press conferences coming from different sectors of the country's economy and also about social security issues as well. But one of the things that's very important to bear in mind, these government advisors, they are coming from the Chinese Communist Party, but most of them are coming from democratic parties in China, and some of them do not even have any party affiliation. And China is experiencing uncharted water right now. They are too. I mean, think about it. It's only recently China become the second largest economy in the world. So a lot of things that China is facing right now needs to be groping its way through the river, as we say, from the very beginning of reform opening up.
Well, and that's the thing, making this transition, this transformation that you're seeing in China, it's happening in lightning speed, but how do you manage it? there's going to be new issues as well. A lot of people are going to end up without jobs because of it,
Yes, there are a lot of challenges, but, the issue is about turning challenges into opportunities. We repeat it once and again on a program. Yeah. It's extremely important for China right now, and I guess for the rest of the world as well.
Absolutely.
So I guess for now, we bring it back to the Beijing studio. There are a lot of content coming up for the closing ceremony.
Absolutely.
Indeed, guys, the more than 2,000 proposals have been submitted, all aiming to make China a really better place. Thank you very much, my colleagues Mike Water and also Tian Wei, reporting from outside the Great Hall of People in Beijing. Now, CPPCC members are now voting on 3 political resolutions on its closing meeting, and a report has just been passed on the work of the Standing Committee of the CPPCC National Committee's review of their past year's performance and also establishes plans for this year. The country's top political advisory body has pledged to play a better role in building a moderately prosperous society.
Well, Donnie, let's continue that topic on proposals. Earlier, Mike and Tian Wei introduced all the highlights, some of the highlights. But actually, in the past week, more than 2,000 political advisors from all walks of life have made their proposals in this year's 2 sessions. Take a look.
Some local governments intervened in the market with administrative methods to clear the inefficiency capacity. We must rely on the market mechanism to achieve that result.
If a nation only develops natural science and engineering technology, but ignores philosophy and social science, then development is unsustainable. My proposal is to set up national awards for philosophy and social science, so that they will receive more attention.
I think there are 2 very important things for the development of the private sector. One is fair competition, and the other is a better legal environment.
I believe basketball will give people more than a different experience. It can help the youth learn the importance of cooperation, of individual efforts, and how to better deal with the setbacks in their life.
Well, as well, my colleagues Mike Water and also Tian Wei said just now, this year marks the 70th anniversary of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the most powerful political advisory body in China. So what is the CPPCC and what are its major functions? Let's find out.
Democracy, a word that comes from the Western world, is closely associated with elections. But here in China, apart from elections, there's the concept of a consultative democracy, a distinct political system of its own. Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, says, quote, "The essence of people's democracy is that the people get to discuss their own affairs." This is what the CPPCC, also known as the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, does to realize China's democracy. It's neither a body of state power nor a policy-making organ. Rather, it serves as a political advisory body, kind of like a think tank, made up of more than 2,000 people from all aspects of Chinese society. They include democratic parties, representatives of religion and ethnic minority groups, and people from the worlds of business, science, sports and entertainment. Members discuss major principles and policies proposed by the central and local governments. It gives proposals on matters concerning political, economic, cultural and social affairs. It supervises the implementation of the constitution and the country's rules and regulations. You may not know, but the advisory body gave birth to the People's Republic of China in 1949. During its first plenary session that year, Beijing was made the capital city, and the 5-star red flag was made the national flag. Since China's reform and opening up formally began in 1978, the CPPCC has played a major role in supporting China's economic and social development pursuits. Deng Xiaoping, then chairman of the 5th National Committee of the CPPCC, said the organisation should take into account any factors that maintain political stability and boost the modernisation of China. Looking ahead, next year is the deadline of China's 13th five-year plan. It outlines how China will accomplish its task of building a moderately prosperous society and eliminate extreme poverty throughout the country.
Based on our country's new development goals, we should pursue a more balanced focus on improving people's lives and promoting social and economic development, and be prepared to fight against the major risks faced by businesses, work on targeted poverty alleviation, and fight pollution.
To achieve that, the CPPCC will continue to fulfill its role in consulting China.
As we speak, the closing ceremony of this year's CPPCC session is underway, and this just came in. Political advisors have also passed a report on their proposal-related work. Many of the proposals focus on the so-called 3 tough battles and high-quality development, improving people's livelihood, also tops the agenda. The CPPCC received over 5,000 proposals in the past year, quite a large number.
Indeed, 5,000 proposals, very impressive indeed. And I guess they cover really everything according to our observations of
it's
this
more
year's
than 2 proposals each for the
right,
political
because
advisors.
we have more than 2,000
Right.
members of the CPPCC. And for more insight into this, let's talk to our studio guest today, Mr. Jaime Florcruz. He's a former CNN correspondent in Beijing and also now the visiting professor in Peking University, and also Victor Gao Zhikai, our current affairs commentator. Welcome to our special coverage on CPPCC and MPC, indeed on CGTN. First, this is a question for both of you, actually. CPPC members, as we just mentioned, raised more than 5,000 proposals, almost 2 for each member of CPPCC, covering everything from tax reduction, from financing of private enterprises, to air pollution, to environmental protection, to education, even to sports, etc., etc. You just name it. The question is, because that is the main job of CPPCC as an advisory body or a supervisory body, the question is, how strong is its supervisory function? How many of those 5,000 proposals really can reach the legislature process and then cash in the final law and regulations in the country? Victor?
Well, yes, indeed. There are more than 2,000 members of CPPCC at the national committee level, and none of them actually has a full-time job as a member. They actually have a full-time job somewhere else. And about 40% of the members are Communist Party members, but 60% of them are non-Communist Party members, and they come from all walks of life. And therefore, each member actually has some advantage in looking at his or her own area of expertise. And normally they will come up with very much of an insight as to whether there is a problem, whether there is a weakness, whether there is a need for change or reform, for example. So I think they come up with their own ideas, and in many instances their ideas are not only their own ideas, because they collect these ideas based upon the suggestions or advices or feedback from people around them in their own community, for example. So they are really coming from the real realities in China, and the proposals they make are very dynamic, and they really reflect the realities in China, and they will get a lot of attention.
How can they impact in terms of making of the laws?
There is a registration system. All the proposals will be registered, will be discussed, and then the CPPCC Secretariat will analyze them and divide them into categories. For example, if a proposal is related to transportation, it most likely will be referred to the Ministry of Transportation. Right. If Yao Ming makes a proposal about basketball, it will be referred to the
sports.
Absolutely. Right. So then each department of the government will analyze these proposals very carefully, and definitely there will be a feedback to the members, and eventually many of these suggestions or part of the suggestions will be accepted into real action plan or being adopted into the legislation later.
Well, Victor, having said that, let's get back to what just happened at the closing ceremony of this year's CPPCC session. They just adopted a proposal-related work report. What role can that kind of result play?
Well, for example, when the chairman of the National Committee of the CPPCC, Mr. Wang Yang. He has been the chairman for a while, and I understand on a bi-weekly basis he would chair CPPCC National Committee meetings, and they will invite members of the CPPCC who in many cases are an expert or authority in their own walks of life to talk about what they think are the most relevant issues. And the chairman of the secretariat will again gather their information. And this is not during these 2 sessions. This is on a bi-weekly basis throughout the year. And the proposals you talked about 2,000 or so, or 5,000 or so, will be gathered in the framework of the CPPCC session now, forming part of the Lianghui, or the 2 sessions. And then they will divide and analyze these proposals either on a weekly basis or on a normal basis or during the Lianghui, and eventually funnel them into the government departments, or they will be referred to the NPC session eventually to be discussed and to be accepted into the law. Now, one point I want to emphasize is that the oversight about how these proposals are being dealt with is a very important one. There is very speedy feedback, and there is constant monitoring as to what is happening to the proposals and whether the proposals, if they are valid or very relevant, are accepted into action plans.
Right. Jaime, you've been in China for almost 50 years, 46 or 47 years, yes, indeed, and you've been working for CNN as a correspondent in Beijing for how long? 14 years. Mm-hmm. So according to your observation, how do you think the transformation of China's 2 sessions of political system?
Well, obviously the CCPCC celebrating its 70th year originated from this concept of united front. The Communist Party leads China, but the Communist Party also needs the support of various sectors. So this came about with the idea that China, the Communist Party, needs to hear from the rest of the country, the different sectors that represent the various sectors on the grassroots level. And so that's been continued all these years. And this week, the closing ceremony is merely a formality of a long process, a year-long process of consultation. So the number of proposals reflect, I think, the complexity of the problems and opportunities that China faces now. If we look at the members of the CPPCC as virtual lobbyists for the different sectors that they represent, we can see that China faces a complex of issues, of problems, but also of opportunities. So this session is an opportunity to sum up what they've done the past year and to look forward to what still needs to be done in the future.
And Jaime, talking about challenges, earlier we just mentioned the 3 tough battles, namely yes, poverty alleviation, environmental protection, and risk management. Mm-hmm. So what kind of momentum you'll be getting from this year's CPPCC gathering? What would their focus be in the year-long work?
I think that it shows that the leadership is not tone deaf, meaning that they are aware of what's going on in the grassroots, but also in the whole country. And that's why we are hearing all those buzzwords of the risks, the challenges, as well as the opportunities. I think this work report will reflect that. It also shows to me that a lot of the issues that China faces now, jobs, healthcare, housing, they're all what we call bread and butter issues. They're pragmatic issues that most Chinese care about, and it's in China's interest that they are addressed effectively.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jaime he saw actually the members of CPPCC as lobbyists. Victor, do you agree with that? Do you think they can be defined that way?
In a sense, yes and no. Why? Mainly because mostly these CPPCC members do not bring a very specific company-specific or institutional specific issue to lobby for that particular institution.
Because that's not only the question from Jaime, it's a question from many people, indeed, both in China and abroad. Because a lot of CPPC members, they are elites or very successful business people, businessmen. How can the system or CPPCC guarantee that they represent the interests of grassroots?
Indeed. I would say CPPCC as a system is very unique in China. There is no similar institution anywhere else in the world. I would be very interested, for example, in discussing with Jaime as to whether we can use the concept of CPPCC and hypothetically come up with a CPPCC system for the United States, for example, or for any other country. Because in the United States, the political system is very much confrontational. You have two-party system, etc., fighting each way out of the system. I do not mean whether this is good or bad, purely as a concept, but that's what the Americans have. Here in China, we also have fierce political arms wrestling, but it's very much based on the overall direction of consensus. You need to eventually come up with consensus, and the nation need to move in the same direction, rather than, for example, being pulled out in different directions and each getting at others' throat, for example. In this sense, CPPCC has a big role to play, because they gather all the informations, they sort out the differences in a preliminary way, and the proposals they bring to the two sessions, I would say, are with the main task of building up more consensus, lining up more consensus, moving the people eventually in the same direction. And what's that direction? It's making life better, making people happier, improving the living standards of the people, making sure there will be greater political stability in the country, making sure eventually China enjoys peace. So I think this is the political system here in China. People are mobilized to think, but not to fight. People are mobilized to think in the same direction, move in the same direction. And I think whether Americans or Europeans or Japanese agree with our system, that's another issue. But this is the system we have, and it works in China.
You see, for many years, we've looked at the CPPCC as kind of a flower vase, we call it, a huaping. It's there just for show. But I think over the years, we've seen the institution grow and grow with more teeth, more influence, and really influence the legislative part of it. They're not legislators, and that's why I'm calling them lobbyists, because you have the NPC, the delegates of the NPC, who actually do the legislation, but they are influentials, and that's what they bring to the discussion.
I do agree with you. A lot of proposals, especially raised in recent years, really do have teeth and have great impact in the lawmaking process in China. We'll be getting back to you, gentlemen, for more insight. Well, Pandeng, this year's two sessions actually come at a very crucial time juncture with the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the People's Republic of China.
And also the political advisory body itself, 70th anniversary.
And also comes at a very tough external environment. For instance, the U.S.-China trade relations, the trade disputes is going on very fierce indeed.
Yes, and we'll be talking about that very soon. But now let's get more vibe from the ongoing political season. Trade relations between China and the United States are closely watched during this year's two sessions in Beijing. Earlier, CGTN host Tian Wei interviewed Zhang Mao, Minister of the State Administration for Market Regulation. He said the China-US trade negotiations would have a positive role in perfecting some previous practices to better integrate China into the global system.
The U.S.-China negotiations are still going on right now, as you may know, Minister Zhang. So from your perspective, how do you see the latest development? What role do you think your administration will be able to play?
这次中美谈判当中有很多事涉及到我们这个机构的工作。
The China-US trade negotiations are related to a lot of work of the State Administration for Market Regulation, such as intellectual property rights and the business environment. We need to update our ways of doing things with international practices to better advance globalization and to further integrate into the global system. China didn't have much experience in intellectual property right protection. We can learn from the world's best practices in order to encourage innovation and technological progress and to improve product quality. In that sense,
and now let's cross live to the Great Hall of the People.
This session is convened in a year when we entered a critical time to build a well-off society. Central government attached great importance to this, and we have received massive support. General Secretary, President Xi Jinping, and other party and government leaders all present at the opening and closing ceremony of the second session of the 13th CPPCC, listen to the consultation and discuss with CPPCC members of state affairs. All of the CPPCC members have carried through these principles of Xi thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, carry out in-depth discussion of report on the work of the government and other important documents of the two sessions, and also to carry out discussions to put forward the 4 competences and the 5-in-1 comprehensive systems, and give insightful advice and have reached a fruitful result. This session has condensed the wisdom and pulled the intelligence of the members together, which has showcased CPPCC's clear advantage as the top advisory body of China and has showed the vitality of the Chinese democratic politics. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of the PRC, and so is the 70th anniversary of the establishment of CPPCC. We have accomplished many daunting tasks in the past 70 years, and with the strong leadership of the CPC, we witnessed great changes of China, and the Chinese people are marching forward along the road of socialism with Chinese characteristics. The Chinese nation is closer than ever before to its great dream of national rejuvenation. In the past 70 years, the CPPCC has been actively involved in building of the new China, changing of the new China, discovering a new path to reform and realize the great Chinese dream, and has splendid history and has made a great historical feat. We have now entered into the new era, and CPPCC now is facing greater stage as well as greater responsibilities. We should never forget where we started and keep in mind our mission, and to have a clear positioning of CPPCC and have a clear orientation of its historical missions, and continue to carry out our wisdom and use our experiences to push the cause of CPPCC forward. We would also need to continue to learn and strengthen our learnings in all fronts. Scientific theories should be transformed into the motivation to unite ourselves and struggle. Learning is an important tool for making progress. CPPCC cannot achieve what has done today without learning and studies, and this is also our future orientation. Faced with a new era, new positioning, and a new mission, CPPCC will have to carry through this tradition and use learning and study as the political responsibilities of all CPPCC organizations and members. This is an important path for us to improve ourselves and renovate ourselves and deepen our understanding of Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristic for a new era. This should be our priority. And also we need to carry through the important principles in the remarks of General Secretary Xi Jinping's speeches and improve the work of CPPCC according to General Secretary Xi Jinping's important remarks. We should have fuller understanding of the principles of the important documents. Not only should we learn, but should also think and contemplate and act on what we act on our consciousness. And we also need to attach importance to the four competence, the four awarenesses, to combine theory with actions and improve our level of political awareness, to seek truth and so that our thoughts and ideas is in line with the requirement and deployment of the central government and the central party committee. We should also base all of our consultation on scientific theories, as well as the heritage of the 70 years of history since the founding of the PRC. That is the history of CPPCC as well as the United Front. We need to have a correct historical concept and know well the hidden logic in our 70 years of struggle, as well as strengthen our identification in terms of emotion, theory, and path. We should move forward hand in hand. We also need to aspire to innovation and be courageous enough to make more innovations. The systematic reform should be further optimized. The CPPCC as an important part to realize socialist democratic oversight and political consultation is an important embodiment where the CPC leads people of all country and all ethnicity to realize our ultimate goal. So there is no end to our efforts and innovation as well as explorations. We should stick to the guidance of Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, and stick to the four principles and their coordinations, and to stick to the political system and the principle of democratic oversight and political consultation for CPPCC, so that our work can keep up with the new era. We should also further optimize the socialist system and push forward with the modernization of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and we should further optimize the consultation organization's functions so that our system can be further materialized, and the operation of CPPCC and its democratic procedure should be further implemented so that the party consensus can be translated into actions of the entire country. The CPPCC should match its content with its political and tendency. We should also have a more diversified way of implementing these decisions, and we should use information technologies to consolidate and further communicate different ideas. We should discuss important matters and poll collective wisdom on critical matters, so that this kind of advisory body can give quality consultation advice to the decision-making body. we should also enhance our united front and better serve the central missions of the party and the country. We should unite because this is the key to resolving all daunting tasks. In our revolutionary history, we can see that this is also a history when the CPC leads people of all nations to continue a struggle. We should march forward to the final goals of our struggle, and this kind of unity is based on reaching consensus while reserving our differences. And it's also based on our common cause and common interest. To improve our unity at the CPPCC, we need to have clear principles and strategies and equal consultation. Through criticism and self-criticism, education and self-education, we should also be preserving differences and respecting different ideas. CPPCC is an important part of national governments, and it's important for us to support and condense the wisdom together. And then to improve our quality in this regard, we should also carry out public relations, public consultation, education to fend off the risks and cope with the challenges. Improve the confidence and also to unify our thoughts and actions to the scientific judgment of major matters and major missions. Wisdom and our power should also be integrated into one mission of realizing the Chinese dream. In a new era, CPPCC needs to adopt a new look, and the CPPCC member for new era should also adopt a new image. The members should know more about your missions of CPPCC and follow the principles and regulations and stay integrated. And we should further improve the overall quality and diligence of the CPPCC members. We do not have any honorary members. All of you are responsible members. You should practice your responsibilities and do everything you can to put in endeavors in this cause and be courageous enough to shoulder responsibilities. And it's important to become a major participant and a promoter of this CPPCC and handing the annual report and homework in time and push the work of CPPCC to a new level. Distinguished members, dear comrades, the 70 years of splendid achievement that we've made is the result of the hard work of generation after generation of Chinese people. Development CPPCC is also the result of the struggle and fight of generations of CPPCC members. Let us unite closer to the Central Party Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, hold high the banner of socialism with Chinese characteristic for a new era, and practice the Central Party Committee's decisions and implement their important guidance on the work of CPPCC's work and realize the Chinese dream and pull all the wisdoms of Chinese together and give a splendid report card to celebrate the 70 years of the 70th anniversary of the founding of the PRC and build China into a country of prosperity, democracy, and beautiful socialist strong country. Please all rise. And sing the national anthem. I hereby declare that the second session of the 13th CPPCC National Committee is concluded.
All right, that was the closing session of this year's CPPCC, on which the chairman of the CPPCC just made a speech in which he said in the new era CPPCC will further enhance its capabilities and functions as a supervisory body, apply the 70 years experience of this organization to better assist the work of the Communist Party of China. And he mentioned 2019 is a year of both challenges and opportunities, and CPPCC will further enhance its role of assisting CPC, or Communist Party of China, to promote high quality and, more importantly, stable economic growth.
And Chairman Wang Yang also mentioned some tasks for political advisors. For example, he called for a new image, new standards of work for them in this new era. And for more insight, shall we get to our guests?
Yeah, to our guests is Haimi and also Victor. Well, Victor, as Pan Zheng just mentioned, Wang Yang said in his speech, several news, new era, new image, new function. How should we understand the word new?
Well, China is, as you mentioned, in uncharted waters. I don't think there is any institutional or individual knowledge base to handle all the challenges that China is faced with. Why? Because everything in China is new. Every day brings new opportunities and new challenges. Therefore, I think Wang Yang is absolutely right. No one should be complacent. All the members need to study and study, learn new things, and make sure that your proposals are higher in quality and can better reflect the realities on the ground, and also can make better recommendations so the CPC, the political party, the ruling party here in China, and the Chinese government can absorb your constructive proposals. And I think this means that we are faced with new realities. No one in China can afford to be complacent. We need to continue to study and learn and break through and innovate.
This is actually the only pragmatic way out, indeed. Well, Jaime, you've been we mentioned before that you've been in China for such a long time with a very profound observation of this country. So what do you think is the most important new challenge that China is currently facing?
Well, I think that the message that we're getting in this past few days through these meetings is that China confronts a host of challenges. Mr. Wang Yang says China now is in a bigger stage, right, in a new environment, China is bigger than before, biggest economy, nuclear power, space power, and all that. And so China's responsibility is also bigger.
Right,
Responsibility
which is also a challenge.
For China as well as in global affairs. So that's a challenge. But I think the one thing that's not new that the CPPCC plays is that it's a platform in China to project a consensus, a national consensus of where China stands and where it's going. It also, I think, plays a kind of a safety valve. It's a perfect platform for Chinese, for all the delegates to air proposals, even grievances or complaints, as well as aspirations. And I think this helps the leadership in getting a pulse of what the society is thinking, but also to gather everyone under a kind of a consensus to move forward.
And Jaime, when you're facing something new, you can always go back to history and learn something from it. And in that closing speech made by Chairman Wang, he mentioned the 70th anniversary several times. But actually, 70 years ago, it was the CPPCC session served as the de facto constitutional convention.
Yes.
And the common program adopted back then served as the de facto constitution until 1954. Now, we're in this new era. Do you think we still can learn something from the very origin of this political advisory body?
Well, I think one lesson that perhaps China can learn from is that the Communist Party cannot do everything. It leads the whole of China, but the Communist Party needs the united front that the CPPCC represents. It needs the support of all the sectors of the society, and that is crystallized by the delegates who come here every year to show that they care for China, but also to show that they are willing to work with the Communist Party, work under the Communist Party for a common goal.
Right. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll be getting back to you in a moment. Now, with this year's CPPCC session just concluded, let's go live again to my colleagues Tian Wei and Mike Water, who are now standing by outside of the Great Hall of People where the closing session just happened. Tian Wei and Mike, hello there. And both of you have been listening to Wang Yang's keynote speech there, and combined with what you know about this year's major issues, what got your attention there?
Well, it was very interesting. You know, right now we're watching as the members stream out of here, all of them listening to it. It struck me as almost a principal or headmaster talking about, you got to do your homework, you got to work that much harder, shoulder these responsibilities. So really kind of trying to lift up the level of the proposals, as was mentioned in the studio. Yeah. That was kind of my takeaway.
Yes, exactly. 2,000 strong, as you can see. Yeah. The numbers of the members of the CPPCC coming out of the Great Hall of People. But one of the things that really struck me for the takeaway for this year's session is the daunting tasks China is facing right now, and namely at the closing speech given by Wang Yang, the chairman of the CPPCC, he's talking about let's do our own things well. So how can you do your own things well? Mike, I think you mentioned several points. One is the reduction of the taxes and also fees, which mentioned in the government work report. China's continued process fighting three battles: environmental degradation, about the financial risks, and also about some of the other areas like fighting poverty, and also bringing, as he said, advanced manufacturing and crack a few important key technology developments. I think those issues are very interesting for our international viewers given the circumstances right now.
And we have one of the members right here who just exited just a moment or two ago, and we're so thankful to have you joining us.
Professor Wang Guiguo.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the foreign investment law, because everybody's been talking about that. From a legal standpoint, and that's where you kind of weigh in. Give me your sense.
Yes, a draft was introduced, as you know, and also Premier Li Keqiang also mentioned the relaxation of the controls on foreign investment. In particular, he mentioned that a negative list will be introduced, and also foreign investment national treatment will be adopted. At the same time, transparency will be promoted. I think all these will promote the foreign investment because it will provide a much better environment for foreign investment.
Right. Of course, the law is beautifully drafted. For now, it takes the NPC deputies of the National People's Congress to eventually confirm it. But now, Professor, here's the thing: implementation. As we all know, any legal framework without implementation would not really become viable at all. So, Professor, what about that?
Well, of course, implementation is very important, the most important actually. And as far as this law is concerned, I think it is still quite sketchy.
It's a basic law.
There is quite a principle. It certainly requires much more detailed implementation rules. And I hope when doing so, this law will be closely connected with international principles.
Let's talk about, you used the word sketchy. We've been hearing a lot of questions from Western media, is the BRI, is it a debt trap, that sort of thing. What's interesting, I just interviewed Parag Khanna, who's out with that new book, The Future is Asian, and he said the U.S. should stop being on the outside criticizing. China joined the WTO. They should join the BRI. What's your take about getting more international engagement and also the transparency issue?
I think the world is highly globalized. Collaboration is a must. Whether it's the US or China, no matter how strong you are, you need international collaboration. You need the assistance of other people, other countries. Of course, US cannot stand outside for too long. I think collaboration is the key.
There are differences, but also it's important to focus on the common ground. As we see, China-US trade negotiations are going on. The negotiators from both sides just called one another, actually yesterday, about some of the details of the possible framework there. One of the things that people have been talking to is how is this negotiation going to impact China's future growth and also reform and opening up process? Professor, earlier I interviewed Mr. Zhang Mao, minister from the Administration of Market Regulation. That's a new body, of course, in China, just coming into being last year. But he's been talking about whether it's IPR or other issues, China is new in the field. So China can learn a lot through this negotiation process as well. But of course, it has to be a fair and balanced negotiation.
Well, in my view, I would regard this as China joining the WTO, which will further push the opening of China, which is very much important. For instance, intellectual property protection. If you want to be innovative, you want to help the researchers do their work, you want the country to be scientifically advanced, you have to protect the intellectual property.
Let me ask you about the e-commerce law. What's your sense on that?
Well, e-commerce is the same, is something new, and China is quite advanced in this regard. Yet, intellectual property is still very important and needs protection.
Counterfeits and also of the protection of brands as well within the e-commerce law.
Exactly.
And also the issue of monopoly as well. That is an issue that we haven't talked about much. And these days you see what's going on with the rest of the world, also in China. That's also an issue that people are discussing at the ongoing, wrap it up now, CPPCC sessions.
Exactly. And also I think coming back to your first question, again, implementation. I understand China and the US have some difference with regard to implementation, but I'm sure in the end they will have an agreement, and actually more effective, better implementation of all the laws, including international agreements, and of course including the one China and the US will conclude, will be very important, not only for the US, but also for China, and most importantly for China, and also for the world.
The two of us were live when this kicked off. We're the two of us live again as things come to a close. There's a lot that happens in the middle. What's your sense as you walk out of here about this session?
Well, we are talking, the guards are watching and marching
great
behind
success.
us.
Great success.
Great success, definitely.
Well, of course, great success means that people have realized that we have to come to a consensus to bring the country together and to bring the country and the rest of the world together through the best way. So thank you so much, Professor Wang Weibo from Zhejiang University, CPPCC member, joining us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
really
sir.
Appreciate it.
All the best.
Yeah. But Mike, as Professor just mentioned, bye, Professor.
There you go.
Just mentioned, one of the most important issue is that through what kind of ways we're looking at the changes, through what kind of ways we're looking at the challenges. Is it positive? Is it negative? It's all upon us to really grasp this opportunity.
And as he said, specifics key here. How do you implement? And that's what we've got to watch.
Yes, indeed. But it's this exciting session this year, and challenges. That means people have to work hard. China is not afraid of working hard. And as we know, this is your first session. I guess you want to say a few words before we wrap it up.
It's been fascinating, I'll tell you that. And the weather has been great today.
Absolutely. You know, right across us from the Great Hall of the People, we're seeing the China Central Exhibition Hall. There they have an exhibition about the achievements of past 40 years of reform and opening up.
Yeah, I was just there yesterday. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Look at what the country has achieved with the hard work of the people here and with the collaboration with the rest of the world.
It's fascinating because you go in this direction, there's the automotive industry, you go over here, it's the space program. It's just amazing. You track what's happened in the last 4 years.
Exactly. And now we're in a new stage, a new era. It's about China going one step forward to figure out how we can do it with the rest of the world as well. For now,
we'll head back to the studio.
Thank you very much for the lively discussion indeed. And my colleague Mike Water and Tian Wei outside the Great Hall of People in Beijing.
And they raised some quite profound questions indeed. But let's get more updates from what just happened at closing ceremony of this year's CPPCC session. Political advisors adopted a political resolution supporting major reports delivered during the two sessions, China's annual political season, and the document called for cutting taxes, improving the country's business environment, and furthering supply-side structural reform. And of course, we'll provide you more details on this. But don't think this could be the first time such a political resolution is adopted.
And more on that, let's discuss with our guest today. Victor, this is the first time we saw the parts of such a political resolution at CPPCC session. What's the significance of that? Why did they decide to do it this year?
Yes, this is truly extraordinary because in my recollection, CPPCC has not done such resolution before. And why they are doing this? I would say under Chairman Wang Yang, the work of CPPCC is becoming more and more institutionalized. Meetings are more often, and CPPCC conducts sessions very, very often and very, very much so on an institutionalized basis. And therefore, rather than purely just expressing the CPPCC views through individual proposals, for example, which are very, very important as we discuss right now, having a CPPCC resolution is making the voice of CPPCC as a whole more impactful on China. And I think the several things they mentioned in the resolution are right what China is needing for these resolutions and signals. And I think going forward, CPPCC will become a more eloquent and more impactful platform to express their views and also to send signals, not only within CPPCC itself, but really to the nation as a whole as to how these major issues should be outlined and most likely how they should be addressed.
Hai Bei, the political resolution actually covers an area of the supply side structural reform, which is also a focal point in the US-China trade negotiations indeed. You've been on our special project called the Real-Time China and been on the bus observing China, traveling from one city to another. So according to your observation during that project, how do you feel the ongoing supply side structural reform going?
Well, I think
is it efficient enough? Is it effective enough?
I think it's work in progress. I could see on the ground that many things are happening or are being planned, like the Xiong'an new region, for example. But it also shows that there are still many things on the agenda. And in fact, I think the CPPCC resolution is significant in the sense that it has specific, or it's, it cited specific issues rather than just being a collection of empty slogans as it used to be. So I believe that the CPPCC, the role that it plays really is to project to the Chinese audience that there is consensus and that they are aware of the problems, but they also have the solutions to the problems.
And what about another issue mentioned in that political resolution, Victor? Cutting taxes. Of course, as a common person, I'd be very happy to see more of that. But let's talk about it at a grand level. What's the big design here?
of course, purely from a taxpayer's perspective, individually, on my part, I would say the more taxes the government can cut, individual income tax or corporate income tax, etc., the better. Why? Because in China, personal income tax is less of a burden for people with average income, but corporate tax and all kinds of levies on corporates, especially on smaller and medium-sized companies, can be very much onerous of a burden. And especially when other countries, for example, in the United States under President Donald Trump, they are slashing down corporate income tax very significantly, and we need to really lessen the burden on the corporates here in China. We need to level the playground. We need to make sure that the Chinese companies are more efficient in terms of the tax being levied on them, and they become more competitive, especially facing the pressure from the United States. So I think this will be highly welcome in China, and this will also make CPPCC as a platform more welcomed by the Chinese communities as a whole, especially in the corporate world.
And earlier we were talking about supply-side structural reform, and in his government work report, Premier Li Keqiang mentioned that tax rates for manufacturing industry will also be further lowered and earned quite a big round of applause. How does that help China's ongoing reform here?
Yes, I think this is very important. Sometimes when people say that taxes need to be lowered, there is a counter-argument saying, oh no, because we need to have a higher level of government revenue. But sometimes there is a philosophical point. One argument is that the lower, of course appropriately, lower the tax rate, the government eventually may actually have larger income coming in, because you actually stimulate more economic activities and the enterprises become more efficient and they are more profitable, and eventually the government actually stand to get more income. Further, another argument I personally support is that the government actually does not need to have an ever increasing revenue base, because the government can be more frugal, for example, and be more efficient in deploying their resources, rather than expecting to have an ever expanding revenue base, ever more money to spend, for example. Sometimes let the companies spend money, let the citizens spend money, and let the whole society become more prosperous, rather than, for example, government spending more and more and more on infrastructure. So lowering the tax base is absolutely the right thing to do.
To shrink the government fiscal revenue is actually part of a benign circle here, so we cannot just look at it in a particular case.
I also think it put it simply, by lowering the taxes of individuals as well as companies, it also puts more money into the pocket of individuals, which will probably increase consumption.
Which means bigger momentum here.
Because you want to transform China's economy from production-driven to consumption-driven, and this will help.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll be getting back to you. The draft foreign investment law actually has been just a hot topic during this year's 2 sessions. The bill is expected to strengthen legal protection for foreign investors in China.
And let's talk about this foreign investment law. Jaime, what are you expecting here? Because it's still under deliberation and it's expected to be voted on in about 2 days' time. What's the vibe you've been getting during this political season?
Well, over the years, I think China has taken incremental steps towards this law, which is actually a welcome step, especially in the eyes of the foreign investors in China, the foreign businesses in China. And so this one, I think, will be a big step that could assuage or could make these foreign investors in China feel better. It's welcome too, because protection of intellectual property is good for China to be able to entice more foreign investment into China. Many of them are afraid that IPR violation is not protected here. So that will help. But also, I think in the end, it's to China's benefit, because more and more Chinese enterprises have, through innovation, now have their own intellectual property to protect.
Indeed, enforcement enforcement is a very important thing here, because it means a lot of competition from foreign companies with the local. Do you think the enforcement will be an issue here, Victor?
Enforcement is always important, and I think the court system, the government system sometimes is not very effective in terms of enforcement for a variety of reasons. Sometimes regionalism, localism is a factor, for example. Sometimes there are attempts to go beyond the judiciary system to insert political interference into the system, for example. Sometimes corruption is a problem. Therefore, I think we need to really focus on enforcement. Without enforcement, laws and regulations are basically not worth the paper upon which they are written. We need to have a very, very predictable, transparent, reliable enforcement mechanism so that the rules and the laws and the judiciary system, the process, are fully respected.
All right, thank you very much indeed, gentlemen.
Thank you very much indeed.
Jaime Flores from former CNN Bureau Chief in Beijing, and also now the visiting professor at Peking University, and also our current fast commentator, Mr. Victor Gao Zhikai. Thank you very much for your insight today. Well, Pan Deng, I wish we have more time to talk about a lot of important issues in terms of the proposals delivered by the CPPCC members. And the foreign investment law apparently is one of the staples of it. But due to time limit, we have to end it right here. And we can wrap up today's special coverage of
That's right, and that's it for this
session.
edition of special coverage on China's annual political season. I'm Pan Deng in Beijing.
I'm Li Dongning. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.